Have you ever heard of the Salar ethnic group? They're one of the minority groups practicing Islam alongside the Hui and Uyghur ethnic groups. I'm interested in discussing them because there are many unique aspects to how they arrived in China and how they've managed to endure amidst religious discrimination issues there.
Salam alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
All right, first off, let me explain that the Salar people actually have Turkish origins. They're claimed to be descendants of the Salar tribe, an ancient Turkish tribe of the Oghuz Turks, who inhabited the western part of Turkey. Salar itself means conqueror everywhere and undefeated. For centuries, this ethnic group has resided on the border of China, in Qinghai Gansu, mingling with Tibetans, Hui, Han Chinese, and Mongols, starting from the Tang Dynasty era. Now, let's answer the question. How did these Turkish tribes manage to reach China back then when the distance was a whopping 5,946 kilometers? Well, there are a few versions. According to legend, there were two brothers, Haraman and Ahman, along with 18 members of the tribe, who escaped with only camels carrying water, soil, and the Quran. They arrived in Qinghai and settled there. Another legend tells a similar story. The two brothers were wandering, searching for a new area with a white camel. But at one point, the camel turned into a statue, so they decided to settle in that area. That's why the white camel became a symbol of the Salar community, as it's believed to mark the beginning of Muslim Salar society in China. But if we're talking about legends, it's not entirely accurate, because the Quran carried by the two brothers still exists and is kept in the Jiezi Mosque in the Xunhua region. The Quran preserved there is considered the oldest Quran in China. Even during every Mawlid celebration, this Quran is brought out as a symbol of the journey of Islam brought by the Salar people to China. There are also graves believed to belong to the figures who led the Salar tribe's entry into India. Alright, let's get back to how the Salar people settled in China. So the Salars who arrived in Qinghai settled on both banks of the Yellow River, to the north and south. The ones in the north are called Salar Hualong or Bayan, while those in the south are called Salar Xunhua. According to the latest census data from 2010, this ethnic group numbered 130,607 people. Now, when it comes to the physical features of the Salar people, we'll notice quite a distinct facial structure compared to other Muslim ethnic groups in China. For example, the Hui people's faces closely resemble those of the Han Chinese, but the Salar people are a bit different. The physical characteristics of the Oghuz Turks still largely define this group. The reason for this lies in their marriage traditions. Going back to history, when the Salar people began arriving in Qinghai, they started marrying Tibetan women, who were predominantly non-Muslim. The Tibetans agreed to allow Tibetan women to marry Salar men after making some demands to accommodate their religion and culture. The agreement was that Chinese cultural influences must remain ingrained in the Salar tribe as long as Islam wasn't prohibited. That's why, if we observe the architecture of Salar homes, we'll notice it still heavily reflects Chinese culture. So in a way, Tibetan women were the first original wives of the Salar people upon their arrival in China. In the Salar community, Salar men are allowed to marry Tibetan women, but Salar women cannot marry men from the Tibetan ethnic group. The reason behind this is the difference in religion and culture. Because of the marriage rules allowing Salar men to marry outside their own ethnicity, the ethnic composition within the Salar community is quite mixed. However, there's something interesting. The physical appearance of most Salar people still resembles that of the Turks, except for Salar women who marry Hui men. In the Salar community, Salar women can marry Hui men due to cultural and religious similarities. So, if there are Salar people who closely resemble Han Chinese, chances are they are descendants of the Hui ethnic group. Due to the marriage culture within the Salar tribe, you can actually distinguish their ethnic origins based on their surnames. Initially, the majority of Salar people had Han surnames because originally the Salar tribe married non-Muslim Han individuals. The Han ethnic group itself is the largest ethnic group in the world. For example, Han Yowin. He was a Muslim general from the Salar ethnic group with a Han surname. While in the past, most Salar people had Han surnames, nowadays, the majority of them have Ma surnames, indicating their Hui descent. An example is Ma Bufang, a Muslim general who controlled the Qinghai region, and Ma Biao. The Ma, used by the Salar and Hui people, serves as a substitute for Muhammad. There's also something interesting about the divorce rules among the Salar people. The divorce procedure there is relatively simple. The husband only needs to announce that he no longer desires his wife, and then the woman will leave the house and be free to marry again. Regarding clothing, the Salar people are similar to the Hui ethnic group. Typically, they have beards, wear white shirts, and mostly sport white caps. The traditional attire for men consists of a jacket and a cap. For women, after marriage, they wear traditional white or black headscarves, while unmarried women usually wear bright-colored Chinese clothing. Music is also an integral part of Salar culture. A singing style called Huayar is shared among the Han, Hui, Salar, and Tibetan ethnic groups. They also have a musical instrument called quoshuan. It's a stringed instrument made of silver or copper. When it comes to the livelihood of the Salar people, on average, they work as farmers and traders. They practice horticultural farming. Some also engage in animal husbandry and local woodworking industries. In terms of language, they use their own language, namely the Salar language, and identify it as a Turkic language. About 80% of Salar people speak the Salar language, but most of them do not use any written script. So, the Salar language is primarily spoken. As for written script, Salar people tend to use Chinese characters for practical purposes. Essentially, the Salar language functions as a spoken language, while Chinese serves as both spoken and written language, because many generations of Salar people are proficient in Chinese and Tibetan. However, this doesn't mean that the Salar language doesn't have its own written script. The Salar people refer to their written variant as Tamga. However, only a few people use this language. And as I mentioned earlier, the religion of the Salar people is Islam. Some of them identify as Sunni Muslims, but many also follow the Naqshbandi Sufi order.